Welcome to the PESA Key Channel Partner pre-launch of Secura. This is a live event. We've got a great agenda for you today. You'll be listening to some of the top executives at the company speak. At the top of the meeting, we would ask if you could please mute yourselves. We can keep the video portion off for now. We will have time slots for questions along the way, so feel free to ask questions or to raise your hand in the upper ribbon there, where you can actually write in the chat as well. Should you not want to verbally ask a question, you're welcome to go ahead and submit a chat question, but we will have plenty of time for questions through the presentation. Also, please note that this event is being recorded, and we will be able to send it out to those after the event today that might have missed it or would like to go through it and listen to it again. So with that, let's roll to the next slide. And this is where you'll meet the PESA team. So my name is Gary Herman, and I am the Director of Worldwide Channels at PESA. Howard Sutton is our Executive Chairman, who will be speaking today. Scott Barella is our CTO. Sarah is our Director of Global Marketing, and we've got Dennis Defensor, our VP of Sales, Channel and Marketing. So this is the PESA executive team. And again, you'll have an opportunity to listen to each individual speak and have time for questions as well. So with that, let's roll to the next slide. And I would like to introduce at this time Howard Sutton, our Executive Chairman at PESA.
Well, thank you very much, Gary. And thank you. Thank you all for attending. I just want to start off by stating what is obvious to us, but want to make sure it's communicated to all of you. And that is our channel partner strategy is the bedrock, it's the foundation and the pillar of our strategy. This is not an augmented bolt-on. You are all at the core of our go-to-market, and ultimately the success of this whole endeavor is relying on the channel partner program. And it's a fascinating time. For those of you that have been in VDS for years, this is a dawn. Dawn, we think of sunrise. Dawn is also defined as the beginning of a phenomenon. And that phenomenon that is a disruptive event in VDS specifically is cybersecurity. For us involved in this industry for many years, it was all about improving resolutions, decreasing latency, improving reliability, improving redundancy, etc. It was all about functionality. We didn't have to worry about cybersecurity. In fact, our architectures that were developed over decades, as we all know, were not developed around cybersecurity. They were developed on delivering functionality. Next slide, please. With regards to a dawn and a new beginning and a disruptive event, I think this is one of the greatest revenue generating opportunities for all of you and ourselves. We look at this disruptive event as a huge revenue opportunity for us, and also at the same time securing the nation. On May 12th, the Executive Cybersecurity Order has elevated and highlighted, quite frankly, the deficiencies in VDS specifically. SDI switches, KVM switches, HDMI switches that PESA has sold successfully for years, are by their architecture unsecure. The signals are open and can be viewed by all. And in fact, if you looked at what we would call outdated certifications, that have been EAL4, certified, if you look at the self-authored security targets, it states in them, well, you need physical security and trusted users. That's the security implementation. What that is saying is I need 100% trusted users for this to be secure. That is the polar opposite of what is being asked in the executive order, and that is a zero trust environment. So legacy systems are only 100% off on that category. So the fact is that all these legacy systems, the billions of dollars of installed VDS type of environments over time are going to need to be replaced. They are not cyber secure. What does that mean for the likes of all of you and all of us? Is that this creates just an enormous opportunity. And it's not just product. As we go around and talk to clients, we find a massive difference in knowledge of cybersecurity. There are the customers and clients that have incredibly in-depth cybersecure knowledge. Now, I can tell you those are deep in the minority right now. For many, for years, it was just a check mark and a checkbox on a certification and really knew nothing about cybersecurity. Who's going to educate them? Who's going to inform them about the VDS requirements? Yes, there'll be internal programs, but it does rely on to all of you and all of us to help develop this program, which means there is a lot of service opportunity. Look at the growth of cybersecurity service companies over the past half decade. It's incredible, the revenue that's being generated, and it's valuable and informative revenue. Next slide, please. This list is going to be discussed throughout the presentation, but I just want to state it up front, and it will be repeated because it is so important. Clearly, the cybersecurity and zero trust environments, for implementing that, you cannot do an add-on to an existing application. We found that out when we started this program 4 or 5 years ago. You cannot take an existing, for example, control system and bolt on security in a legacy control system. We looked at that. We analyzed that. We spent capital and resources to try to figure that out and realized you couldn't do it. If you want proper cybersecurity, you have to design it in from the get-go, the ground up. What we're seeing out there in most applications is they're trying to bolt it on or leverage the infrastructure, the existing infrastructure of the application. It's weak and it's exposed. We had to start from scratch to develop a secure, proper zero trust environment. Currently, VDS are primarily stovepipes. They're not distributed environments. People cannot access from remote facilities cyber secure information in VDS. Clearly, from a functionality, we wanted to support 4K and beyond. KVM is an application on the platform. It's not a switch just solely defining it. Zero latency, I mentioned distributed, and of course, cloud enabled. These are all the parameters that we considered and then some in designing what we're going to talk about today. Two aspects to understand as well. We hear about NIST certified module, and we're going to talk about the PESA NIST module. That gives you the libraries and the capability for your application. It states nothing about how it's implemented in the application. So as we know, don't get fooled by a car having a big engine in it and therefore coming to the conclusion that it's a race car and could go fast. It needs all the other pieces associated with that engine to make that car travel quickly down the road. The analogy for us is in the application. Ensure that you are using the libraries in the application itself to deliver the security and cybersecurity to the user. What we have done is we have reached for this. We called it our North Star. We've reached and delivered Suite B, which is CNSA, formerly Suite B, which is top secret capabilities in our application. So it's taking the NIST certified module and applying its capabilities throughout the application. Next slide, please. So what are we going to talk to you about today? The big announcement, pre-release is, drum roll, PACE's Secura Lion. It follows on in the tradition of PACE's history and naming its products after cats. And this is PACE's Secura Lion. Next slide, please. This is an example of, I believe, an ad that Sarah has put together. But it's using, you can see, and Sarah's going to go into much, much greater detail, that we're using the lion theme throughout. I think it represents in the Wild Kingdom something that we're trying to represent for our customers in terms of securing our family, protecting them, protecting our territory, defending our territory. And I think it's a very apropos animal to be representing Secura. So next slide, please. So I'm excited. I'm excited for the team. I'm excited to try to deliver and provide your companies with the best we can do at PACE. We're going to learn from you. We're going to correct our mistakes as quickly as we can. And we are going to really attempt to really make a significant difference. And at the end of the day, also to have some fun. We live in stressful times, and it's nice to be doing something new. I'm finding it very interesting, and I'm totally regenerated, as you can probably tell by my enthusiasm for this. I really think we're onto something special, and we're a leader. And we started this 5 years ago. We've got a lot of experience now, so it's great timing for the cybersecurity executive order. Next slide, please. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Scott. Scott is our head of development. He is also our CTO, and a lot of you have met Scott over the years. His reputation precedes him, sometimes good, sometimes bad, right, Scott? And, we'll pass it over to you. So thank you once again very much for attending.
Thanks so much, Howard. It's been a journey. That's an understatement. As Howard had alluded, this has started, and what we call Secura is what you see before you. We started this journey many years ago, and as Howard said, we tried our best to see if we couldn't bolt it on to something we already had done and had been so reliable over these years. But at the core of all of that was the missing piece of the security core. And as we started to wade into the details and we started to get involved in how this all was working, we realized quickly that the idea would be to start from ground up and have to build this application in its entirety and not miss anything within the system that would expose any object or code or whatever. If it's IP, it's encrypted, and that's the whole spirit of that. So if you're looking at what is Secura, this is a real basic idea where you've got a number of PCs or thin clients or what have you. To the left, they're encoded, encrypted, and moved into the network fabric, where they are connected based on security levels to the endpoints, to the receivers that can display the proper video after they've met all the criteria of going through and being controlled by FIPS modules and so forth. We'll get into that in a second, but the idea is, here it is in a nutshell. It's quite simple at its core, and it's very unique. It protects the control on content for, the situational awareness. What does that mean? So typically VDS systems have always been used because they're real time, right? So that if you want to see actionable items, you typically use uncompressed baseband signals. And I refer to baseband as signals that we traditionally think about with respect to HDMI, DVI, VGA, for goodness sakes, is kind of where this kind of started to splinter off for the computer guys. And then for the older video guys, we use coax cable. and this was kind of the idea. But we wanted to make sure that that at the heart of that, we didn't have any ability to tamper or leak or provide unauthorized access to sensitive video. And really, that's the key piece of that. So we naturally ended up in most of our or in some of our government operations, not all of them, but into command and control rooms, briefing rooms where, you know, the topics were sensitive. The personnel that attended these briefings and in these control rooms were authorized and cleared with respect to their security levels, and they could be large, they could be small, they could be in between. But this is also very fitting for the commercial sector, where you've got sensitive information from patients, for example, or in areas where you want to make sure that the video being seen by a very large group isn't tampered with, like, for example, a sporting stadium. But we'll confine our kind of examples to something that we're quite familiar with in the command and control areas, and show you what that all means. What we are not is teams like we are today, talking and participating, and it's a quite marvelous setup for communication. But it is lacking in latency. It's not very good in that. They use a different codec for this, and it works. Don't get me wrong, but it was intended to be used over the internet, and that's not what we are. Right? We are trying to provide video into very sensitive environments and very strict and physical senses. So I wanted to distinguish this piece because this is awfully oftentimes confused with what we're trying to do with Secura. Yeah, so it's not this, right? When you look at the heart of this and you examine it very closely, what you find in our, what I'm saying is baseband or SDI, HDMI, DVI, KVM type setups, is they were intended to be interoperable, right? The idea would be that you can plug any monitor into an HDMI port, and no matter which one you select, it'll always come up, right? That's the spirit of most of these open standards like that. Unfortunately for security work, it's a disaster. So we wanted the ability to send certain signals to certain monitors that had a level of security. For example, I might have classified video that I'm trying to send, and on the other hand, I might want to send some unclassified information. It's good for one, but not so good for the other. So how we mix and match that is really kind of where we got into this, right? So I'll put together a nice little piece that will show you a little bit of what we had in mind. But in this scenario, when we're dealing with these kinds of open type signals, the scale, you can't really make them very large. You can't really scale it very quickly. And when we traverse this to IP, we gain encryption, and we gain speed, and we gain this ability to separate things out, which is what we were after. And at the root of this is the problem of an open standard being kind of always available, right? These signals are spilling out of the cables willy-nilly. All you have to do is hook them up. And that's kind of anti what we were trying to do with the signal. So at the core of this, we would have to basically secure this signal, connect it to another one, and then unencrypt it so that the intended transmission and delivery of that signal to the endpoint is done in a fashion where we really don't see any difference in terms of speed. And so that was the whole spirit behind this. And that caused us to actually look at how we would architect this solution. The bad thing about signals that are on the floor or, you know, open, you don't know whether you've got a good guy watching it or a bad guy watching it. That's the danger, right? So when we get into environments where we've gone through a lot of trouble of making sure that personnel are the only ones admitted into the rooms, we've gone by credentials. This is that whole notion of zero trust, right? You want to make doggone certain that this thing is being seen by the right people. And that requires a little thinking about how you architect this thing. As you know, USB sticks would be a disaster, and they have been a disaster. So, you know, we were keen to making sure that as we did this in the media signals, video, audio, USB, etc., we were keen to open standards where they could easily be transferred and transported in an unsecure manner. So we regard all the flows that we're responsible for with respect to the video distribution system, the VDS parts, as the highest security we could attain, right? So with that, we went through a lot of work to make sure that we were looking at all the current government standards, all the current government crypto, the keys, everything. I mean, from soup to nuts. And we knew that it would require a foundation, as Howard had mentioned earlier in his statements earlier. This had to be started from the beginning, right? We built this thing brick by brick. A funny little story. My lead developer used to work for Apple, and they had a wonderful little application for the Air Force. And these guys were all gung-ho to show off a little training thing on their iPads. And bang, we went to get it all, the application done. And they went to him and said, hey, hey, Jim, we need this. We need the security dust you have, and we need you to sprinkle it on our application, and away we go. And he kind of smiled at it and said, boys, I got some good news and some bad news. First, the bad news. You're going to have to start all over again, because the way you build a secure application isn't at the end. It's at the beginning. Fortunately, you knew how you built it, so all you have to do is build it with different bricks and different mortar. And he went about doing that over again. And about 6 to 8 months later, they had done what he expected them. And the Air Force is, of course, very, very happy with the way it all turned out. But at the core of this was FIPS 140-2 grade security. And that's really kind of, as you start to boil it down, this is where that mortar keeps these pieces in place. So it's the actual bricks that we make that have to be scrutinized to the point where you can't just add it at the very end, sprinkle it on the top, and be done with it. So that's not how it works. It has to be more or less baked in at the very foundation of it. So that's not possible. So at the beginning here is the FIPS 140-2 crypto. Now, this isn't the end all be all, right? This is just part of it, but this ends up being a very important piece, because it's first of all scrutinized by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. They oversee the FIPS program. In fact, they're going through a little bit of a change from FIPS 140-2 to 140-3. So this is the year where both 140-2 and 140-3 live. At the end of September, the 140-2 will fade into the sunset, and 140-3 will take over. There's really not a big difference between the two at this juncture. It won't be during the transition, but as we go forward, they'll incorporate harder standards and harder goals to achieve. So one of them, for example, was the AES standard. We didn't have the 128, and now we have the 256. These kinds of things, but this is where PACES started from, right? We went through the trouble of getting a FIPS 140-2 crypto algorithm certified and tested, and we are now in the process of seeing that come through here. But that's only part of the equation, right? Suite B crypto had its own journey as well. This was later referred to as the CNSA, and it's gone through some changes. So, at the beginning they allowed 128. They don't allow 128 anymore. So the 256-bit AES encryption was what it boiled down to. DSA, the signatures and key agreements from Diffie-Hellman exchanges of keys and the kind of keys they built. RSA has gotten a heck of a lot of scrutiny over the years, and that's kind of gone to the side. It's still allowable, yes, but a lot of them have looked at other means to do that. The SHAs have all changed. We went from 256 to 384. So these are all going to have their journeys. In other words, this will never end. This will continue on down a path where you have to kind of keep it up to date. And that's the spirit of what we had incorporated into Secura. We know these standards are going to change, and our system is built to change them. So that's the really cool thing about it. But here's the piece that we go to the board with all the time, right? The equations. The math doesn't lie. It's very straightforward, and we've got to have a crypto standard. So we have the PACE crypto module as a CMVP module that we'll be using. and we need to incorporate Suite B crypto with it. In other words, we have to manage how we treat that crypto, and that makes for a very secure implementation. It's the implementation of how you do it. Each item, the 1+1, that part's pretty straightforward, right? How you implement it. This is how you achieve the security. This is how you make sure that this stays the way it's supposed to be, and you lock it up. And if you obey these kinds of formulas, you're going to have a very cyber secure environment. I mean, bottom line. We just seen some breaches, namely for a big company, a good company called SolarWinds, and we all saw it on the TV, and we were all wondering, geez, how did that breach happen? Well, insiders tell me these were self-signed certs. This was what got some people in trouble. This again goes away from the Suite B side, right? So there's more to the story than that, I'm sure, and then most of that probably is not going to be divulged. But if you have some rule sets, you have to follow them. This goes to the point of the compliancy, the implementation of it, right? So that's really what we achieve with Secura. It's the combination of the two. You have to practice what you preach. So if you're gonna invoke Diffie-Hellman keys, then you need to use them at all times. You have to have mutually authenticated certs on both ends so that you've got it all, right? And the crypto piece that you use consistently. You don't just say, well, for this we're just gonna ignore that. So we looked at everything, and so we started looking at the tool sets to build it with, right? And what we found is that the government's kind of keen on open architectures, right? Because these tools are available to them as well. And so we started with the containers and how we would actually put these onto servers. That's always changed here over the last decade. We used to do this with dedicated monolithic type servers, and we don't do that anymore. This is much easier to do in a container, but we want to make sure that the containers are locked up, right? So we figured that Kubernetes was definitely the way to go about this, and the government's kind of going down their path with a couple of their programs. We followed the same kind of suit, So all the tools that are around the Kubernetes structure of how you implement this is used with Docker containers, and we use Rust. Rust is that little crab guy there. They call our developers that use Rust code crustaceans or rustaceans. A play on the word crustacean, but that's kind of why the crab came about. But the Cassandra database is also a very key element of how Kubernetes is deployed. All of these pieces and the pods that we create for these containers are very strictly suggested by the government to say, this is how you will do these containers. This is how you will interact. And we're paying attention to all of those pieces, and we're building these building blocks with open source. And we think that's definitely what's going on the commercial side, and they're kind of following suit in the government involved stuff, and so are we. It's just a natural. I've created this little slide to kind of give you an idea of how this all works. You go, well, geez, I really don't know what the heck he's talking about. Let me give me some examples of what you're saying here. So we have a control system, and this control system is a Kubernetes control with a pod of several containers in it, and we have a switch fabric. And we have a rack room where we're going to put sensitive information or sensitive assets into. These could be servers. These could be receivers that are receiving sensitive satellite information. These are a part of how we bring the video and audio to the floor. And we're going to place these objects into the rack room, and we're going to put our nodes next to these assets and connect the HDMI and the USB to before we connect it to the switch. So the first thing is I have a node, and the node is going to be running in FIPS mode so that it does a self-check as required by DoD and others. But that node is going to be checked off, and once it is, then it can connect to the control system and say, hey, I've got a FIPS node here. Now we'll get into the security levels in just a second here. But the idea is that the node, before it's connected to the switch and being acknowledged as a legitimate source, is running in a mode where I can connect to it via our Pace of Crypto module, and it says, "Hi, I'm here." Okay, great. We have another one? Yes, we do. We have a couple of more nodes here we're gonna hook up, and all of those guys are going to be running in FIPS mode. So we've acknowledged all of the sender nodes. On the floor, we're going to do the same. We're going to have listener nodes on this side, and we're going to make sure that that listener node is in fact running in FIPS mode. Okay, he's in FIPS mode. We're going to acknowledge this guy as a listener, and we're going to look and see if we've got any more in the floor to connect our nodes that are in the rack room to the nodes on the floor. Now, this is a very basic example and kind of born of a C2 type environment, but you could imagine other options that basically have the sensitive assets in one room and display stuff in the other room where you've got operators, right? Now, here's the key thing. We need to acknowledge that we have different folks that do different things, right? So we might have classified guys. So we need to match that with the node that has a classified setting. So we're going to mark this first guy here as classified. And we're going to note that he is in this tier of signals that will be considered classified. And we want to connect those to people authorized to see the classified signal. Now we're going to do that with all the nodes on both the rack room side and the floor side. So we have in this really simple example, we've got red C's for classified, we've got black U's for unclassified, and we've got yellow S's for secret, for example. So we got three basic tiers of security here, and we're going to come up with a policy where the upper tier can see the lower tiers. So I'm going to pick on this group of three over here. The officer that's sitting at this seat is cleared for secret, but he's authorized also to see some assets that are unclassified and some assets that are classified. Now, in other policies, only those classifications are connected to those. That could still be done. So, for example, this guy could be all classified and he only sees classified. It's pretty simple. But in a mixed environment where we're going to cross the domains, this policy at this particular agency or DoD install, and he's authorized to see the down lower ones. Again, our system is flexible enough to allow different policies. So now the other guy here, he's classified, and I've grouped these three together, and he's got two unclassified signals. Again, policy is that the upper class can see the lower class, so he's fine, but he needs a panel. So that panel has to be signed off. He's running in FIPS mode, and he's going to connect to the controller, and he knows what seat he's at because he's assigned maybe seat 23, and the officer that's logged into this is classified, and he's saying, I want to change my two nodes from an unclassified node to receiving classified nodes. In other words, I'm connected to see unclassified sources at these nodes, but that node is cleared to see other things. So he's going to make those changes. He's going to change those to classified, and away we go. Now, lots going on there, right? So the enclave is one group. It's set at a certain security level. And you have seats and assets that are at another level of security and have been defined as such. You have users who are using this information, and you've got fabric that's it's connected it all together with a control system, and it's deterministically connecting these security signals together. This whole piece here is really the basis for our provisional patent that we just filed. We don't have anything that is secret sauce in this, although I would argue that we probably have a few things that are very unique. But in the combination of what we've created here, it's very unique, and our patent attorneys agreed. And so this has been filed, and we use some very interesting things, but we're paying attention to these mandates of security when it comes to an IP environment. So even though these are media signals, they're IP signals at their base, and so we can connect them using all the nice tools that we have with respect to security. That's the really exciting thing about this, right? So we have different nodes that we can connect, and this is kind of the family that we can connect to. So we have, for example, nodes that I just illustrated that are that can be used like KVM nodes, or we have others that are just video and audio nodes. We have cameras that we're working on. We have these touch panels that are really cool, some that are created for creating display walls, and others that are at seats where we have a number of monitors. We may have 3 monitors, we may have 12 monitors, we may have 5 monitors, doesn't matter. We have a control panel that can intuitively put the placement of the video, depending on who's signed in and so forth, to what they'd like to have. We're working on new encoder modes that are using H.265 ultra low latency. This is kind of under wraps right now, but that's kind of the thing. We're using a DVR, a means to record these and synchronize the playback for, again, the security level intended for them to be played back and viewed or scrutinized. All of those pieces are part of the Secura overlay, and all of these pieces use crypto and keys to make sure they obey the rules of the road, so to speak, and the environment that we're going to place it in. So here's the first node that we talked about in that little roundabout example. This is a node that can be designed as a KVM piece to have USB functionality. It's only a part of the story, right? We can supply not only KVM, but we can also do some other things. You know, we can record video, we can display video, we can see it real time. There's all sorts of possibilities that we have in this. But at the root of this, the encryption is done at the FIPS level and obeying 140-2 in our crypto module. And the ability of this node is really kind of keen to being able to separate all the flows out. So I have separate audio flows and separate video flows and separate USB flows. And the control of that is done on these touch panels, such that we have a small enough a footprint where we can put these in front of the operator and then push this aside so that once he kind of sets his environment up, he's off and running with his mouse and keyboard. But we don't have all this extra cabling to fuss with. We can move the signals around and connect them as the operator intends them to. So he can move his mouse and keyboard over to another PC or without having a little mechanical switch in front of him. We can do that all in the IP domain, right? It's really, really, really sweet. The panel, for example, runs in PoE, but the more important piece is the flows of asking and authenticating the user that's sitting in front of that seat is using the NIST PESA crypto module along with the compliant pieces of the CNSA keys that make sure that the communication to and from is kept under lock. That's the whole point of it. We're working on some other things that are really exciting, and so I always have to keep ahead of my development gang, and of course my development gang is excited about getting all of this wrapped up and so forth. But here's some of the peaks of what we're working on. I mentioned this earlier, but it's an H.265 encoder, which is extremely low latent. I mean, we're talking, you know, something in the order of several frames as opposed to several seconds. So we think this is really exciting. They're intended for WANs, right? So we recognize that in, for example, a SCIF, we've kind of got that one cordoned off and nobody shall leave, so to speak. But there's other applications that we've been asked about, especially with the consolidation and all the initiatives of making sure that IoT can bring sensor information in from different segments of the military. So, for example, pieces of DoD that are Air Force and some that are Army and some that are Navy and so forth, and we can share information so our fighting units can be effective. This is kind of, we'd need a WAN to architect that, right? So we think that the same pieces are going to be played, right? You're still going to need crypto at its base, right? So, but if you had a smaller payload to move around and you still had the enjoyment of a really low latent environment, this is where this comes in handy. So here's a use case that we've been presented where we have a Kubernetes cluster that the crypto officer has said, okay, well, these 3 SCIFs, for example, and these 2 ships, and we need to have some information sharing. And we're not going to use your network, we're going to use their network. And these networks are connected as they wish, and they can move these encrypted flows and authorize them as they wish. And these are the kinds of conversations that we're engaged with. And these are all a part of MILS. They're all a part of CNSA compliancy. And how do we do it? And this is kind of what we were watching from afar, but they haven't really paid attention to the idea of media signals as well. So this is really kind of an interesting conversation when we started up. But at the heart of it was that new node, what I just kind of pointed out here. The other thing is there are certain agencies and DoD enclaves that do a lot of recording, and they do a lot of surveillance, and so they need cameras that are equipped to do that. High frame rates come to mind, high resolutions come to mind, and we need to encrypt those flows the same as our others. And so we're working closely with a company that can help us build PESA crypto module inside the camera, and we can be cleared up to top secret with this guy. So this is really exciting because we've got user controls that have been presented for the camera operator. They're obviously all encrypted, the control aspect, the video aspect, potentially audio, depending on how this asset's being used. And so these are really interesting pieces that you can start to fold into Secura that were never really thought of at the beginning. And so when I say, KVM, yeah, you can do that, but you can also do some other things. I mean, you don't see these from other companies. The other thing that we recognized is that the streams needed to be recorded. Sometimes the streams needed to be played back for scrutiny. And so we could take in streams from both baseband sides and IP sides and encrypt them, and even encrypt these pieces part of it, right? Have edge encoding, we have clip and marking functions, fast forward, rewind, playback, and not only one playback, but synchronized playback. Let's say we had an event that we wanted to look at synchronized as a playback from 6 other viewpoints. In other words, 6 other clips that we're watching a minute and a half of very critical video, very sensitive video, that we needed different angles to make sure that what we were seeing was time marked. This has been requested by some agencies that are doing some work in this area, and we can bring that into the fold in Secura. So this is another piece that we're working on. The crypto module will expand, and we're thinking that there are other pieces and parts that we've been exposed to in media for years, and this could come into the fold. It would obviously have to go through the encryption pieces of it. It would have to go through the marked certificates and the ECDH key exchange, etc. All of those pieces can be accomplished in Secura, and as we grow, we know that there are other nodes that'll be coming into the family, and so that's where you'll have really interesting conversations as you bring in other disparate pieces that you may not think of in the setting of a traditional baseband type architecture. But when you start to think about how we could do this in IP video and very low latent video, real-time video, is really interesting to start to think of the possibilities. So here's the part where if you've got some questions, I'll turn this back over to Gary to hand him the torch, and he can give you some opportunities to ask me some questions.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Welcome to take any questions at this point from anyone. You can feel free to raise your hand on the button or simply go ahead and ask a question. Any takers?
Hey, Gary, with a time limit, let's proceed to marketing.
Yeah, okay, let's go ahead to the next slide and we'll introduce Sarah.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
All right. I'll take over. Thanks. So, hi everyone, and wow, I really hope you're as excited as we all are about Secura Lion. But where would such a great product be if we didn't get the word out? So that is why PESA has carefully crafted a marketing program that looks at a 1-year plan and then a 2 to 5 year plan, and and designs accordingly. Last year, when we planned this out, COVID was in play and we had to be very strategic. So we developed a 12-month plan in cadence with FCA events and their publications. So starting with 6 pre-planned and scheduled webinars for a framework for the year to tell our story, and then we are able to add others as needed and warranted. We also put into that plan 8 scheduled product-related press releases spaced throughout the year, as well as 6 full and half-page ads to be featured in the Signal magazine. Our team then got involved at local chapter events and national events with FCA and within other industry events and conferences. We've also grown our social media presence on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, both on our own platform and on FCA groups. So we've really tied this into FCA this year. We carefully designed it to succeed whether or not COVID continued. And so here we are 6 months into our plan, and we are making adjustments as COVID starts to the restrictions start to loosen up. And we're working to augment this plan with additional programs to target additional market segments. We are also working to increase our press release distribution networks to broaden them and to hit other markets and adjust as we see the uptake better. We're also committed to partnering with our channel and technology partners on joint webinars. We did one earlier this year. We would be happy to partner with any of you to produce a webinar or a virtual event, or even live ones when they return full force. And we have been taking advantage of, these virtual events throughout the year, and we are planning to participate in live events as they open up, such as TechNets that are happening later this year. We are also planning events and sessions just for our channel partners, such as this one today. So this is the start of something we hope will continue on a regular basis. So we've been getting the word out via email campaigns and social media campaigns. We've recently completed a white paper, which is on the left, on security, and are in the process of completing another. Next to that is a recent press release we did on CNSA compliance. We also have a blog, and we are open to guest contributions. If any of you would like to donate, we're happy to have guest contributions, and are active on all of these social media sites. As I mentioned, please be sure to check them out, and I can send you the links later, but be sure to check them out and follow us, like us. It really helps spread the word. But this is just a small peek at what we've been doing to get the word out. And I'm going to show you 4 slides really fast, but 4 slides to give you an idea of the magnitude of the activities that the marketing department is fulfilling. It's not a complete list, but it's going to give you some highlights. So in Q1, a few highlights. We had 2 webinars, one with FCA and one with a partner. We had an advertisement in Signal magazine. We had a couple of videos that are out on Kit Plus News, 2 product-related press releases, videos added to the YouTube channel, and virtual show presentation. That was at TechNet. Q2, that's this quarter, we have also completed another FCA webinar, 2 more ads that were in FCA Signal magazine. Channel event, this one, 5 press releases. We had 5 press releases this quarter, and a white paper and more videos added to the library. Next quarter, this is what we have planned, is we already have planned 2 FCA webinars, the launch of Lion, which is going to be really great. That's going to be a very busy quarter. 2 more full-page ads in FCA magazine, an FCA write-up on Secura. So they're going to do a write-up on us, another white paper, 2 to 3 additional press releases, and our demo room is getting fleshed out. Q4, we have another FCA webinar plan, 2 to 3 additional press releases, an ad again in the magazine, TechNet Live with a booth and demos and some other another TechNet event. And we're going to start our demo room bookings. And along the way, we're going to, of course, create more content such as case studies, white papers, and blogs. So to go along with this comprehensive marketing plan, we have an arsenal of partner support tools. A few examples here. These are some brochures. There's the capabilities brief, the value proposition. We have use cases. We have various other documents that we have put together, case studies and things like that. And we have glossaries. We have question documents. We have battle cards. We have charts. We have a huge array of slides and presentations. We are happy to co-brand those. We can co-brand the brochures too, in case I missed that. We also have a list of growing of videos, of on-demand videos. It's growing in our YouTube library and online. And one of the great things about these FCA webinars is that some of them count towards education credits via FCA. So this makes them even more valuable to the people that want to view them. And here is a webinar that we are putting on with FCA next month. I'm going to stumble on this. Prepare for transformational changes to your video distribution systems to meet the objectives of the Cybersecurity Executive Order. It is a mouthful, but it is shaping up to be a jam-packed event with very relevant and timely information. The link is below, and the event is listed on the AFCEA webpage and on ours. Or if you want the link to the registration page today, let one of us know and we can get that to you, or maybe I can drop it in the link or in the chat in a minute. So here's something that I think that we're all really excited about, and I think you can get excited about too, is this is the impending opening of our very own demo room in Washington, D.C. It's beautiful. It's in the NAB headquarters with a ballpark next door. It has a private entrance, and we have access to the conference room. There's this great deck with a tremendous view. It's a great place to take your customers and show them the sites and what PESA has to offer with Secura. There's a kitchen. So it's going to be a really great place to bring your customers to see what Secura can do. And with COVID restrictions lifting, the room is currently on track for a September opening. Gary, Rob, Randy, I'm sure we'll keep you posted as that date gets closer, so they'll keep in touch with you. And this is, I love this story. This is at PESA, we like to give back, and we truly love the cats that represent our products. And to go along with the launch of Lion, we have adopted one lion so far, one of what I hope will be many lions. So to provide funding and preserve these beautiful creatures in their natural habitat. So this is that really feel-good moment. And as a gift to you and to celebrate the release of Lion, we have created several Zoom and Teams backdrops so that our partners, you can share in our excitement and in the fun. So these will be available. There'll be a link coming out after the event, maybe later today or tomorrow, that'll provide you a place where you can download these and some of the other content I showed you so that you can have a look. So that in a nutshell is pretty much our ever expanding marketing program. So now that we have covered that program that's going to help you grow your practice, let me turn it over to Dennis Defensor, our VP of Sales and Marketing and Channel, to cover some of the events that have shaped PESA's trajectory, some use cases, partner program details, and wrap up before we take further questions. Take it away, Dennis.
Thank you, Sarah. My part will be short, so let's go to the next slide. So Chairman Jerome Powell said, the biggest threat to the US economy is not the pandemic, it's not inflation, it is cybersecurity. Next slide. What's coming down is a huge increase in IT spending, 55% increase from 2021 to 2022. And 9.8 billion alone is positioned just for cybersecurity. Next slide. And the highlights of PESA were presented to you by Scott and Howard, so I'll skip this slide, go to the next one. So where can you take PESA? Wherever video data becomes very critical, from the Intel side to all the command and control centers in DoD, all the way down to the venues of entertainment events, and even every cruise ship that Disney has as a PESA product in it. Across the board, from federal, state and local to commercial, there is a market for PESA because data has become very prevalent, and this becomes a critical aspect of command and control. So when Lord Nossenberger came on during the pandemic and said, asked the industry, please help us because we need a distributed command and control. Because the current command and control cannot provide security if the participant or a participant is not in the same room. So what happened was, not just in the US government, but all over the world, command and control rooms could not be convened because 1 or 2 or 3 people had COVID. So she reached out and PESA responded, and we have now releasing the distributed command and control. By the end of this year, PESA is releasing the distributed command and control technology, which will allow a participant to be in a location of a limited distance from what used to be a single venue event. So imagine the naval ships out in the ocean among themselves at the edge of the cloud, or a group convened for the sake of coup. For the first time ever, we will have a limited distance between participants and the command control. It will be a virtual distributed command control. That's coming at the end of this year. So these use cases are really based on our need for cybersecurity. Next slide. So you've heard the vision of our CTO, the commitment of our leadership, and the marketing programs. We have a full-blown support for you from leads to closing. We'll be part of your team from the beginning to the end of the sales cycle. Next slide. And this is where the rubber meets the road. We're only selecting a small group of beta partners. We'll do joint calls and sales calls with you. Four-legged and six-legged sales calls are going to be the norm for us. It'll sync up with our marketing events. We have deal registration. If you work on the deal, we will find every way we can to protect you. And our salespeople are commission neutral. They're not affected by whether the deal goes to channel or goes direct. And 95% of Pace's deal are almost always direct. And down, all the way down to finding your partners, sole source vehicles, GSA schedule, or anything that you have that we can pull in, we'll use those to help you close the deal. Next slide. And so where does this take us as in our partnership? As a team, we can sell not just the products, but the services that come along with putting this system into existing environments that need PESA to control the critical data. The video has to be protected in every one of those venues. Then you have the upgrades and you have the maintenance. So it's an ongoing revenue stream for PESA and its partners. So signing up with us gets us the entry-level contract, and it's ongoing every year maintenance and upgrades to keep the technology up, because PESA basically is offering it almost like as a service. So in closing, you have a team here gathered to support you, and we're looking forward to working with you. And the next step will be Gary, Randy, and Rob will contact each one of your groups, and we'll roll up our sleeves and get to a work session. So thank you for coming. And this is probably the best time to ask you if there's any lingering questions, something you need answered, please feel free to ask. Howard and Scott are available to respond if anything leads towards technology or the vision of the company. Thank you, Sarah. Gary?
Okay, thank you, Dennis. And again, we thank you for your time today. If there are any questions, we certainly have a few moments left to take any questions that come to mind. So we'll give you a moment here to think about any questions that you may have, any comments. Please feel free. Okay. All right. Got a quiet group. All right. At any rate, we'd like to thank everyone for coming once again. And we will be following up with you. Please feel free to reach out to me directly to get in contact with anyone in sales or any of the executives if you'd like further one-on-one or any specific information. So again, we thank everybody for coming today and have a great rest of the day. We'll conclude the meeting now.
Okay, bye-bye.